infrastructure, capital and policy to support industrial value chains. That needs to change. We need to move from extraction to transformation, from exporting commodities to building industries, from fragmented national projects to coordinated continental systems. This is the agenda that the African Union is advancing. Through the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, we are coordinating cross-border investments in transport, energy, and water systems. Through the Trans-African Highways and the African Integrated Rail Network, we are connecting regions to markets. Through the single air transport market, we are unlocking mobility and trade. Through the African single electricity market and the Continental Power Systems Master Plan, we are building an integrated energy system capable of powering industry at scale. And through the Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa, we are ensuring that digital infrastructure becomes a driver of productivity, innovation, and competitiveness. Frameworks alone will not deliver transformation. We have enough frameworks as the African Union Commission. Execution will deliver transformation. And this is why a summit such as this matters. It is not simply a gathering, it is a platform for alignment. A space where governments, financiers, and the private sector come together, not to discuss what is possible, but to commit to what must be delivered. The African Union Commission stands ready to be a strategic pillar in future iterations of this summit towards the Africa we build for the Africa we want. I congratulate, on behalf of the Commission, the Government of Kenya and the leadership of the African Finance Corporation for this visionary platform. We further look forward to this summit and this gathering's support towards actualizing the African Union's theme of the year of 2027, that is going to be leveraging the full potential of the single African air transport market and new technologies for continental integration. Improving our aviation connectivity can shift the needle on intra-Africa trade through cargo movement, including delivering continental integration in real terms. The Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Lerato Mataboge, for those comments. We now turn our attention conversations on Africa's transformation and a regional powerhouse. Your Excellencies, allow me to now invite Honorable John Mbadi, Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning, to make his remarks. Let's give him a clap as he is coming. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome you to the Africa We Build Summit of 2026. This important summit provides a unique platform for dialogue and collaboration, which is aimed at accelerating the mobilization of capital for strategic infrastructure investments across the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa continues to face a persistent infrastructure financing gap, with critical shortages in key sectors such as energy, transport, and digital connectivity. These gaps constrain economic growth, limit productivity, and slow our collective development ambitions. Kenya, like many countries across the continent, experiences similar infrastructure challenges, which remain a binding constraint to growth, even as our social sectors continue to require sustained and inclusive investment. Despite the urgent demand for infrastructure development, governments across Africa are compelled to navigate a delicate balance, operating within the realities of prevailing macroeconomic conditions and fiscal pressures. Using Kenya as an illustrative example, our fiscal position presents real constraints on policy choices. Public debt currently stands at approximately 65 to 67% of our GDP, with the debt service obligations consuming about 50% of our ordinary revenue. At the same time, our tax to GDP ratio remains in the mid-teens, reflecting both structural economic factors and the social and political limits of taxation. Compounding these challenges, global financial conditions have also tightened, making borrowing more expensive, less predictable, and increasingly restrictive for developing economies. This mismatch between infrastructure expectations and fiscal capacity underscores an urgent need for new and innovative approaches to development finance. And I would request to pause there and just mention the way we look at infrastructure in Kenya, and more particularly the corridor, is that the corridor is not a route. Corridor is not about rails. It's not about roads. Corridor is an integrated system. It is an economic ecosystem. It is about production. It is about industrialization. It is about value addition. It's about employment creation. It is about prosperity, in summary. And that is why we have a holistic approach to our development initiatives. We are looking at how to integrate various infrastructure projects, because I will tell you that corridor does not start at the ports. It doesn't start at our airports. It actually starts at the farm. It starts at the factory, and it starts at the production centers. It is how you connect production centers to markets. That is what is important. That is why you must also remember, as you do the rails, as you do airways, airports, as you do trunk roads, that feeder roads are equally important. So you must have a system where feeder roads connect to trunk roads connect to meter gauge railway, because standard gauge railway should not be a replacement of meter gauge railway, but should be blending and integrating with meter gauge railway. Then meter gauge railway should lead you to a dry port, which then should connect through SGR to seaports and airports. That is when now you have a corridor that is complete, a corridor that gives value, a corridor that moves you from rhetoric to deliveries, because what we need is not political statements. It's not about rhetoric. It's about delivery. But this requires bold and sometimes uncomfortable decisions have to be made. And therefore, we require bold and courageous leaders in this space. I want to just summarize it by saying that I think the problem that we have been undergoing is that we are trying to do 21st century infrastructure development by using 20th century financing models. That is why we are still thinking about the traditional ways of raising funds. I want to say that this summit could not be more timely. The Africa We Build Summit offers an opportunity to rethink the continent's development finance paradigm by aligning Africa's long-term capital with the continent's vast infrastructure needs. In Kenya, we have already embarked on this transition by shifting away from traditional debt-heavy public financing models and embracing blended investment-led approaches. A key example is the recent establishment of the National Infrastructure Fund, a fund that we have established with an initial capital or seed capital of about $3 billion, which resources we have sourced or raised from divestiture and privatization of capital assets, mobilize capital for commercially viable public infrastructure projects. We are trying to optimize the assets that we have, and this is going to help. This infrastructure fund is going to help in project development, in project designs, in project preparation, feasibility study, economic, social, and impact assessment, procurement process, up to execution. We are also advancing other innovative in the road sector. This is what we call an intelligent and I want to put it this way, that we are looking at a country, and we are looking at a region, and we are looking at a continent that will use its assets and not rely on others, to optimize the use of those assets, and to use the proceeds of those assets for risk restructuring and risk reallocation or allocation. I want to also add the last, which is the revitalization of public-private partnership frameworks to attract private sector investment. As I conclude, Your Excellencies, this summit is expected to serve as a launchpad for bold and transformative decisions that will foster stronger collaboration among African governments, investors, and industrialists to mobilize the capital required to develop the infrastructure that will drive Africa's industrialization and long-term prosperity. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, and allow me at this stage to invite the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, who will then invite His Excellency the President.
Your Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, Your Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, ministers and government leaders from across the continent, Madame Lerato Mataboge, AU Commissioner for Infrastructure, Samaila Zubairu, President and CEO of AFC, Aliko Dangote, Chairman and CEO of the Dangote Group, business executives and global partners, leaders of our development financial institutions, ladies and gentlemen. In Africa, the Africa We Build Summit is a profound opportunity to turn potential into action by forging partnerships, unlocking finance, and building continental synergy. Kenya is honored to partner with the Africa Finance Corporation and the African Union Commission to host this inaugural summit, shifting from aspiration and dialogue to execution with clear outputs and implementation pathways. These sector leaders and international capital towards infrastructure systems that enable large-scale industrialization. Notably, treating infrastructure as a standalone asset delivers little or no impact, requires an integrated approach, linking roads, railways, ports, power, and digital networks to industrial parks and micro, small, and medium enterprises. This summit is timely for two key reasons. First, it coincides with the growing momentum in this Africa continental free trade area. Second, it takes place amid geopolitical disruptions to global and regional trade. Together, these factors underscore the urgent need for homegrown and proactive resource mobilization to finance Africa's development agenda. This scale therefore calls for a candid examination of the policy environment and strengthening of development finance institutions. It calls for harmonizing border trade measures and taking acts in the room. His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, to deliver his keynote address.
Thank you very much. Let's take our seats. And thank you very much, PCS. Your Excellency, our elder in the Africa Finance Corporation, ministers present, CEOs, distinguished participants, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. Most consequential, a launch pad for what we want to see into the future as Africans. I also extend a very special welcome to the Africa Finance Corporation as it makes Nairobi its second home. Welcome to Nairobi. Kenya is immensely honored to host the AFC's first office outside its headquarters in Lagos, nations, and also as a continent. We meet against the backdrop of global economic shocks and disruptions arising from the war in the Gulf. From the war in Ukraine a few years to the war, Africa today produces approximately 10 million barrels of oil per day, which is about 10% barrels of oil per day, which is about 10% of global. However,